I am very, very cognitive around communication as the key piece, because that's where your connection comes from. Whereas a coach, you have to be consistent. It's deafening, really. If they're not saying anything, it's that either they're not confident or they're not comfortable or they don't agree. Times I was quite too much like that with some of the people, which probably didn't always help. That's when that saying, you are the standards you walk past. I am a big believer in treating individuals as individuals, and one hat doesn't fit all. And that can get me in trouble at times.
Welcome to Coaching Culture, the podcast about cultivating culture and leadership. I'm Ben Herring. I've been loving this side of the game for bloody ages. Today's guest is Mike Friday. Mike has been an international coach for almost 25 years and become an icon of the sevens format of the game, having coached 3 international sides, England, Kenya and the USA. 10 years at the USA, 85 World Series, 3 Olympic Games and 2 Rugby World Cups. USA Rugby CEO Bill Goran said on his departure, the positive impact that Mike has had on the sport of rugby in the USA is indelible, which is absolutely awesome. On his own X account, his tagline is geezer/builder of teams, which is absolutely perfect for this podcast. Mike, welcome to the Coaching Culture podcast.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, great to be on.
Yeah. Mate, we'll start straight off with, how do you define culture?
I think it's a group of individuals that have alignment and the way they go about their business. I mean, it is no more complicated than that for me. I think in order to have culture, you need to have common alignment, and it's based around human values, in order to get after whatever the mission may be. And that's kind of how I've always looked at it, in a very uncomplicated, simplistic manner around human values, and alignment, and trying to help individuals maximize their potential for the common goal.
What would be the big couple of human values that you value highly?
Yeah, I am big on honesty, and I am big. And when I say honesty obviously is quite a generic term, right? But there's honesty in yourself, i.e., the man in the mirror, but also honesty with the man man or lady you stand next to. And what I mean by that is that the honesty sometimes doesn't always mean being nice, but it does mean being kind. So you need to be kind, but you don't necessarily need to be nice. And what I mean by that is that sometimes people need to hear the hard word, in order to bring that alignment, that togetherness, that unity. But how the hard word is delivered can be done in a kind way, and that's my point. And that doesn't mean that you don't raise your voice. It doesn't mean you don't use direct or concise language. It doesn't mean that at all. But there is a sense and an understanding and an empathy to that. So I think for me that those kind of human values are important. I expect honesty. I expect integrity, and I want kindness, but not niceness.
Yeah, it's an interesting distinction, isn't it, the two of them, because they often get lumped together. Yeah,
they do, and there is a differential, because everybody loves the hashtag, right, and all of that malarkey. But the reality is, it's that the words behind the word are really, really important. And when you're building a culture, that's important. That there's real clarity, in terms of, so there's no ambiguity in terms of that message. So that means that people are left in no doubt as to kind of how do we get that sense of alignment. Of course, there'll be character, there'll be personality in arriving at it, and you want that individualism within your group, because otherwise you'll lack creativity, and reality is it'll be boring.
Do you think coaches would struggle with that concept of not always having to be nice and reversely striving to be kind? Do you think
I think you've got to work at it. I really, really do think it's something
Yeah.
that you proactively have to work. You have to have great self-awareness, and you have to have good awareness of others. So for me, like, I am a huge person on understanding the person, and taking the time to understand the person, and it's important, and also it's important that you allow them in to understand you, if that makes sense, and that means that you have to show your good side, your not so good side, and the side none of us are perfect, and I think that's the point. Is as a coach, you have to accept that you're not perfect, and you also have to accept and be open to allowing yourself to be seen as you by the group, and that's about being authentic, right? Which is a word again that's banded about, but ultimately being you is important because that's your style, that's your character, and you can't not be you. You can put a face on, but you can't put a face on forever, and people ultimately will see through that the more time they spend with you. So I think consistency in being you is critical, if you want to achieve something, because ultimately your goal is to build trust.
Consistency being you. How's it?
Yeah.
How have you been over your coaching career? Have you been a consistent version of yourself, or have you still had to
Yeah, no,
chop and
I
change?
think, yeah, I think ultimately people talk about styles, leadership styles, and I'm like, really? For me, you lead how you lead, and you've got to be authentic to yourself about how you lead and your personality. Where you need to adjust and adapt, is on in your style, is on your communication. So how I communicate will change, and that style will be different dependent on who I'm talking to, what group, and where I've been in the world. And what you end up doing as a coach is, and I learned this as I went, is you mold yourself around the team. You don't mold the team around you. So when you're a younger and you're coming through, you're quite bullish, and you have to do it this way, and it's black and white, and on my day we did that and so forth, rather than actually, you can have lived experiences. They're fine. They're fine. But also you have to be open to the fact that there isn't more than one way to do that, without, as long as it doesn't compromise the value system. And again, that's where it comes back to, is be open to that creativity and the fact that group may need you to be something else for them. Without compromising your authenticity, you still have to mold yourself around them, and that then comes with your for me, it's communication style, and how you nurture and build the talent around you. Being kind, but not being nice. I am a big one on this, because it's like, I don't want people to get like, I am more comfortable now, believe it or not. People will say you're always comfortable about hitting the difficult conversations head on.
Yes.
But for me, it's about transparency. For me, it's about being open. It's me about being solution driven with those conversations. So when you're coaching, or when you're doing selection, or whenever you're doing things, it's like players only hear what they want to hear sometimes. So again, it's making sure that they understand the message and that everything has a solution. So if you want to get better, it's how can I get better? If you're not getting picked, why am I not getting picked? But how do I get picked? And I think those types of conversations, and they're small conversations, they're tiring conversations, they're persistent conversations, but it is, if you want to be a coach and you really want to get the best out of the people that you're coaching, it's like brushing your teeth. You've got to do it every day, and you've got to emotionally invest. And that's a big thing for me, because, you want to develop the person, because if you develop the person, you'll develop the player. But more importantly, if you do that with enough of them, then all of a sudden you'll start to create and guide this group of people down the path where they can maximize their potential. And then it becomes self-fulfilling, right? Self-prophecy. They start holding each other accountable and keeping each other consistent. And now that's the culture word that everybody, the band's about. But it takes a lot of reinforcement, consistency of message, consistency of action, by you, and holding them to it in order to achieve that.
I love it. Is it tiring? You just talked about there that emotional investment. Does it get tiring? If you like, does it?
Yeah, it did. I mean, especially let's say if I revert it to kind of my last with the Sevens boys. Yeah, it is because the Sevens is a very tight group. It's not a massive organisation, right? Like a professional 15s where you've got 50 odd players and so forth. Normally, you're around 15 to 20. When you travel, you're travelling with 12 or 13 players and 3 or 4 management. So you're a very tight group.
Yes.
But that emotional investment with the conversations, it is tiring, and as a coach, you've got to share that workload, because ultimately when you're building these relationships with players, different players need different things from different people in the management team at different times, and it's also understanding and recognizing, creating the opportunities for the players to find the right connection for them to get the conversation to get where we need to get to. Now, that might not be with me. That might be with somebody else. So get over yourself, Mike. It's not with you. That's the reality of it. Your job is to put in the structure to allow them to achieve what they want to achieve. And that might include you some of the time. It might not, but that's okay. That's more on you, see. And I think that piece is important as well. And a big part of when I'm trying to build let's call it an environment, or build a place where
/team builder. That one.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be me, but if I bring in somebody, for example, in the USA, we had this performance coach. He was ex Navy SEAL, but he saw life very differently. But the values and the alignment were very much with what we wanted to be about and who we were, but he saw things differently, and sometimes he can frame things in a different way to me in order to get where we need to get to, and certain players would go to him for certain things and come to me for certain things, and that's great. And I think being able, and that's an effective relationship working for the greater good and the cause. And I think that your job, if you're so-called leading that program, is to facilitate and create those opportunities for that to happen.
Yeah, you would say these days that, especially in the pro world, that facilitation element is a big one for a leader of an organisation, isn't it? You're facilitating everything: the medical, physio, the players, management. You're that person as the head coach, correct?
Well, you're facilitating, but again, and that's the differentiator, is just to facilitate. Like, you've got to let go and delegate, and you've got to trust, and that's a two-way street, right? But that means you've got to pick your people well. You've got to get alignment in your management team as well as in your coaching, as well as in your playing team, and then across the board. And I think that because the emotional investment is high when you're trying to develop people. You need assistance, and you need to be able to spread and share that load, because again, you need to decompress, and you need to be able to bounce observations and ideas and suggestions off other people who see it from a different perspective.
Yeah. Have you had any misses or mistakes or learnings?
Bucket loads.
What have we got?
Bucket loads. I mean, when you're a younger coach, you're very headstrong, and you're very set on your ways, in that this is the way we do it, and I think there's times, especially in my early career, more off the pitch, I think, when I was trying to create environments where I allowed your emotional investment for the group to spill over to emotion. And as a consequence, you did the wrong thing for the group, but you thought it was the right thing. And you don't know that till after the event. And when you do get things wrong, when you're younger, you're very reluctant to admit you got things wrong. I think with experience, dare I say it, and the older you get, you're more comfortable. Probably comfortable is the better word. I think you're happy. You're more comfortable about realizing that you got it wrong and being open with it. And actually that is probably showing you in a far stronger light than not. because
Yeah.
the reality is that people go, actually, mate, he does get it wrong. And more to the point, he owns up when he gets wrong. And that's exactly what you ask your players to do. So for me, it's like I'm very open in the fact that I ain't got all the answers. I've got an opinion, and I've got some ideas, and I've got some solutions, but I'm not saying that they're 100% right. And so let's kick the tires and see where they go. And a lot of the stuff we did towards the back end, the back end with the boys was very much about kicking the tires as a group to where we want to go. And it's on that kind of coaching continuum, isn't it? Dependent on what type of player. Is it instructional, directional? Is it storytelling? Is it reflective? Is it advising? Is it offering solutions? You go along that kind of coaching continuum.
Do you mix up what style you take for different players based on what you know
Yeah,
of them?
and circumstances. Yeah, and
so this
circumstances.
person needs a story here, and this person always needs a hard, the stick.
Yeah, and likewise, it will change dependent on where it is. Like if it's dependent on where the player is from an experience perspective, but what is the subject matter you're talking about, or what is the context? Because when you're certainly in sport and it's the elite level, there's rugby, let's just say, then there's what's going on in their personal life, their life after rugby, and sometimes they want advice, or all the things are interlinked. So you've got to be able to be agile and move across the continuum. You have to consciously be very aware as to what this person needs right now. So a big part for me as well is kind of moving, like try and see things, see the issue or the problem or whatever you're discussing through your eyes, but then try and go around the other side of the table and look at it through their eyes. So what are they looking for in this conversation? And then come above and what does this actually look like to somebody kind of looking in? So I am very, very cognitive around communication as the key piece, because that's where your connection comes from. And if you get the connection right with enough of them, and more importantly, you educate them to be able to do that with each other, then all of a sudden you can build chemistry. And now,
so your players, like, that's you want them, your interaction, you want that to be mirrored.
Yeah, so we did a lot of work. I mean, I'm a big believer in disc and insights and the personality and working between the colours and understanding yourself. Certainly something we had to do with the USA boys because of the diversity of the country and the diversity of the squad. I've never been in a place that's more eclectic, let's just say, in terms of you could say something and you've upset 3 people, 2 people have walked out, 2 people are smiling and happy, and you're sitting there.
What's the demonstration of that, Mike? Have you got an example of that one?
Well, just this. I mean, the very first when I walked into the USA, this is kind of 10, 11 years ago, and I met them all. I just knew, I was like, whoa, like this. In England, this is the story I use with. In England, when you put a public school kid and a state school kid on a rugby pitch, you can't tell the difference.
Yep.
Because the parameters between the two. In America, you'll have a middle class kid who has a whinge if they only get 2 desserts, and then you put a kid who's on food rations, he's on a ration book, put him on a pitch, you know exactly who's who. Like the diversity of the is ridiculous.
Yeah, right.
And so actually bridging those gaps and those cultural differences was a huge challenge. But there was a lot of miscommunication or misassumption. It's probably the best way. An assumption is the mother of all. So the reality is like we had to educate them on communication and personalities and what the traits are of different personalities, which means that just because somebody sits quiet in the corner doesn't mean that they're not thinking about it. There might be a million things going through their heads. They're just not brave enough to talk about it at that moment. So again, getting them to understand one another and then finding ways to communicate was a huge piece of this, because ultimately we had kind of gifted athletes. Yes, we had to educate them on how to play the game, but their communication and their chemistry was way off. And that was the critical piece that we had to educate for them as players because of the diversity of backgrounds that they came from.
Yeah. I think that just that phrase, the assumptions, is a good one for coaches to remember. And the education of personalities types, getting teams to understand each other, especially in teams that come together from such a diverse nature. I think coaching in general can be laced with a little bit of misassumptions, especially in rugby, right? Like when you've got,
Yeah.
yeah, where it's a physical
100%.
sport. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And also as well is misassumption of what success looks like, right? Depending on what level you're on, isn't it? Okay.
Yes.
Because everybody goes, well, success is winning. Well, is it? Is it really? Sometimes you lose when you win, sometimes you win when you lose. I mean, we've all heard that phrase, but never is it more true. Is that, yes, at the top of the game, you're judged on your results, whether you win or lose, but that isn't whether you're successful. Because if you've, I look at what we did at Kenya and I look what we did at USA, we were down and out. We were going to get relegated to Kenya becoming top 3-4 in the world. USA 1 point away from winning the World Series. But we didn't win, but were we successful? Yeah, we were, because we redefined what was possible with a group of men. And did we get a pint and a half out of a pint? Absolutely. Were these men far better at the end than they were at the start? Absolutely. That's about ego, whether you actually win. And I know that's important at elite sport, but ultimately you give yourself a better chance of getting that W. Whether you get it or not doesn't define whether you're successful. But, when you take a step back and you look at where these people have come from to where they get to, and do they feel like they've been successful, then actually there's a deeper inner feeling there, I think, of actually you've made a difference, which is what a coach is about doing. A coach is about making a difference to the individuals, not winning a trophy. That's lovely. But once you've won the trophy, you're on to the next one anyway.
Correct.
And once you've lost the trophy, you're on to trying to win the next one anyway. So, it
never stops.
It's exactly, it's a 5-minute kind of adrenaline rush, and then you're on to the next thing. But what lives with you is actually, well, how will you be remembered? How will they be remembered? Will they be remembered as a good person that did this? Oh yeah, they never talk. They talk about he was great at that, but they more. You want them to be talking about you, the individual person as a player, when they reminisce 20 years down the line.
That's right. You've actually got a quote here I've got from you. It said, when you're leaving USA, you said, quote, "I'm proud of what we did, but I'm more proud of what the players became."
Yeah, 100%.
What a beautiful statement to go out on. And I think it's, when people reflect on their departures and they say things like that, I reckon if younger coaches could take that at the start of their journeys, geez, how powerful would that be, right?
Yeah, it is. But when you're younger, right, you get caught up. Like, again, you're finding your way, and you're judged on what you do, not who you are. That's the challenge as a young coach, right? Is don't get caught up in the rat race. Yeah, but I won this, I won that. Did you? But did you make a difference? Like, that's tough, right? Because that's easy to say, hard to do, because if you think of the way that the world is built, they all look as a young coaches. They judge them on what they've won, rather than actually what did he do? What did they do to transform that program? Like, where did it start? Where did it finish? Were they what do the people say about what they did for that program? Forget the results. It's easy to say, hard to do.
But it's a great analogy, because I think everyone understands that rat race concept in life, particularly in the first world. And we were just talking off air about, in Fiji, they're on a beach, and just enjoying life and not having to work. But then in the modern world, in the first world, you work to get that where you could have had it in the first place, just by opening your eyes a little bit and appreciating what's there in front of you. And that's kind of the same principle. It's not what you do, it's who you are, and you shouldn't ever forget that.
100%.
Yeah, that's a powerful one for coaches, I believe, all over the world. The pressures and the stresses. Do you still feel the pressures? You've been in it a long time now. Is there still pressures on you?
Yeah, you do.
Wise?
Yeah, 100%. You're in the performance game, right? When you're at the top there, and ultimately that you get sucked into the rat race. Of course you do. I would be wrong of me to say, oh, no. Of course you do, because you actually, I'm a driven competitor. I want to win. I think the perspective I have now is that some things are in your control, some things are not. You can do everything you can do to give everybody the opportunity, the best opportunity. And that's the point, is can you look at the man in the mirror and say, I've done everything I can to give us the best opportunity. And then if it happens, it happens. Now, and that's something you want to be replicated across the team. Because if you've done that, then you can play with freedom, you can play with flow probably. And if enough of them do it, you're in the business. You know, it's all going to come together. But it doesn't necessarily mean you'll still win. It could be a bounce of a ball. Something could just go wrong. The other team could also be in the flow, and they might just play better than you. And so it's also realizing and recognizing. You know, there's been some great games that we've lost, and you're like, just lost to a magical moment there. You know, I had one not long ago in Hong Kong where we played really, really well, deserved a bit. And then Terry Kennedy came up with this moment of magic and won the game. And you're like, wow, okay. You know, you have to take that on the chin. And I think, you know, as I say, is I want to be able to look back every time and get the boys to look back and say, do you have any regrets? Could you have done anything differently? Because if you could have, and they're material and they're fundamental, then that's a learning for you. Don't make that mistake again. Otherwise, you'll have the same outcome. But if you have, sometimes you just got to accept that it wasn't your day, you didn't win, but be resilient enough to get up the next day and go again.
Is it part of your job as a coach to help almost educate the players on that way of thinking? Because a lot of players will get super upset, just like a coach, about losing. And do you actually make a point, you've got to try change the narrative in their minds around what success looks like? Is that part of the job?
Yes. I think you do, in terms of the wider context thing, in terms of what success looks like in life and for you as a man as you find your way through it, right? In terms of the bigger, greater goals of you know, forget rugby's what you do, not who you are. That's a big thing for me. Rugby is what you do, not who you are. You know, and that's the same whether you're a rugby player or you work in the city or whatever, right? That's what you do day to day to be who you are, and it has to be framed that way around, which means you've got to make yourself a better person. But I do, you know, I get as frustrated and as animated and as emotional as they do when we win or lose, and I'm like, but that's okay, right. Because you need to have that, because then you can build what comes next, which is you need to move on, which is the resilience piece, and that's where I am very solution driven. What's done is done. You can't change the past. You can be upset about it, but you can't let it influence what happens next. So you've got to get back into the process, and you've got to try and be better the next time. And that kind of rinse and repeat is something that can be quite tough. You know, if you're in a grind, let's just say you're in the grind of a 15 season and it's not going you well, it's tough, right? Within the 7 season, it's very up and down roller coaster, because you kind of have 5-6 week rotations. So you're able to re-engineer that narrative, because what you do the tournament, you have a period of recovery. That's where you do your reflection, and then you come and then you start the next campaign to build for the next 6 weeks. So that's where the World Series and running that kind of sevens program allowed you to ebb and flow. And change the narrative. If you're in the attrition of a 15 season, it can become quite hard. I think, you know, that's that mental resilience of you've got to change the narrative, reset the narrative week after week, I think is a different challenge. And as long as you appreciate and understand the challenge you have, dependent on the dynamic in the environment you're in, then you adjust, don't you? And sometimes less is more. So in that kind of that 15th, you know what? I'm not doing anything this week, or or something different, or a different environment, different voices. Who knows? I think you have to be agile as well.
Yeah, mate, it's a fascinating component, which a lot of a lot of coaches talk about resilience and leadership and those sort of things, but don't actually put like much thought or coaching into the actual process of educating and training your players to be better resilient. It's quite a
Yeah,
tough thing to do, but it's really important that you do it, right?
I think so. I mean, I think, and ultimately, like resilience comes from collaboration as well. And this is why I come back to that communication piece. Is getting people to, like, I can't emphasize, like people take it for granted, I think, rather than really cognitively work on being self-aware and the awareness of others in terms of, like, if you can communicate better and you can be more understanding of the people that are around you, you don't have to get along, but you don't, you don't have to be best buddies, but you have to know how to get along and communicate professionally in order to achieve, because ultimately you all have the same aim. Then the more you can help them make that either tolerable or enjoyable, the better. And let's be perfectly blunt, right? You've been in changing rooms where there's blokes you get along with, and then there's blokes that you tolerate because he adds to the team, and vice versa, right? There'll be people say that about you, people say that about me,
Yeah.
and it's like they will. But the key is like, can you have a professional relationship if you can't have a personal relationship? If that makes sense, do you know what I mean? In terms of, and I think there are many good examples of where the best teams haven't always got along, but they always enabled a way to find a common alignment, which is the mission, whatever that may be, and then work towards that and be respectful and be cognitively self-aware of how they communicate in order to that it may upset or not upset to achieve the goal. And I think that is a huge part of team sport. It's a huge part of team sport.
Yeah, there's actually something in that. Like when you're talking about professionals too, like being professional in your relationships doesn't have to mean personal in your relationships. And communication is the bridge to create that. Like you don't have to be mates, but you
Yeah.
have to be able to tolerate and work cohesively with someone, regardless of what you think of them externally.
Yeah, you don't have to get along, right? I mean, and there's
Yeah.
lots of great examples of that, but you have to respect one another. And again, that comes back down to the human value, right? You don't, you have to respect them in the professional environment that they're contributing.
Yeah.
You don't have to socialize them in your own time. If you don't want to, that's fine. That's cool. But that there's I think that's respecting each other's space as well. And again, that's why I'm big on that kind of few human values, and we create a boundaries. And as long as you all bounce around in the boundaries, no problem.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And talking about boundaries, how do you drive it? Because, like, when you talked about your sort of be kind, but you don't have to be nice. In your style, when you're driving really high standards around things, how do you keep that without, damaging a relationship? How do you drive high standards without,
Yeah.
you know,
um,
what I mean by that?
yeah. I mean, I, I am very consistent in message and action when I'm out there. Depending on what we're doing, right? For me, it's like, depends if it's a skill execution or a decision. Let's say that way. Because if it's closed skills and we're working that, and the reality is yes, I am a great believer in you got to get it wrong to get it right. That's a huge thing for me.
Yep.
Is that I allow players to get it wrong to get it right, and because that period, that's where you get your greatest learning, your greatest growth. But if you're consistently getting it wrong, I want to know why.
Yep.
And if we're working a skill and you're not getting it right because there's a technical piece that needs to be changed, evolved, no problem. But if it's down to work ethic, attitude, and effort, then my tolerance level is 0. But I am consistent on that. Whether you are the best player in the team or the worst player in the team, it's consistent. If there's a technical difference or an evolution or a change, then I'm all ears and I want to make you better because that's what floats my boat. So there's that piece. And then there's the decision-making part, which is creating the environment to allow them to get it wrong, to get it right, and explore and so forth. But you can't be explore the whole time either. So yes,
you can't just
you
open
can't
gates,
you
no?
can't be explore the whole time. We would be through the weeks is like, yeah, mate, push, but we've already said the best offloaders know when not to offload. So explore at the moment, but then we'll have a session. We'll be like, right, we're looking for accuracy and execution. So part of the decision will be is don't explore the offload if you know it's not on.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Do you set up different trainings for that purpose?
Yes.
So this is a real exploratory
yes.
session.
Yeah, or we'll set different constraints. So like we'll set the constraints around the fact that yes, we want you to keep the ball alive at all costs. Let's just say that, right? So that means I've got to offload at all costs. You do, because now you're going to work that skill at offload, and you're going to work out which one you've got to offload. So you've got to try and work out which is the best one to offload. Is it from the floor? Is it out the contact? Is it before or whatever? So, but you've got to offload because you've got to keep the ball alive. As opposed to then we're going into another constraint of a game, which is right. We're looking for accuracy and execution. So if they go in with the same mantra as I've got to offload, when actually they've got to make a decision, is this the right time to offload, or actually no, I should just ball present and set, and we clear over, we go again. Now we're looking to evolve the decision making process because we've worked the skill. We've worked the skill under pressure. Now, can we make the right decision at the right time? So, all of those types of different constraints, I think, are important. And you've got to, again, you'll be clear on what we're trying to achieve, and then if a player gets it wrong, but he gets it wrong for the right reasons, okay. If he gets it wrong for the wrong reasons, i.e., its lack of effort, attitude, then he's going to get zero tolerance again. So again, hopefully that then becomes self-fulfilling because the players I won't need to say anything because the players are saying it. And they're holding each other accountable. And if they don't, that's again where as a coach, you have to be consistent because that's when that saying you are the standards you walk past, that it can it can creep up. And we're all guilty of allowing it to creep up because, say things are going great and so forth and, we'll let that go. At some point, you've got to check yourself to make sure that, are we living by the standards we said? And if you let it go too far, then ultimately it's hard work to get it back again. Because especially with boys, right? Boys are boys, right? With boundaries, they always like to just put the foot over the top and just over the line, just to see whether or not.
Wow, I've got something I want to ask you, but before I do that, just sort of analogy around that exploring. Like if we're constantly exploring as a race, historically, going finding new lands. If you're just constantly on a ship, keeping on exploring, you're never actually putting down roots. You're actually not building anything because you're never settling and saying, "Yep, let's go here for now."
Yeah.
You keep floating around. But the question I wanted to ask you, Mike, because I was coaching in Canada a long time ago when you first started with the USA, and I heard something, and I've always wanted to know if it's true, along with your standards. This is how the story went, when these stories spread back through teams, that one of your first sessions, the first beat test you did, it might have been a Bronco test at the time, the boys did it, and then they finished, and then you said to one bloke, do you reckon you could have gone harder there? You could have got another length or two out? And he goes, yeah, might have been able to. And then you said, righto, we're all doing it again. And you did a back-to-back Bronco test.
Yeah.
Just to see this. Was that true?
We did do back-to-back Bronco, yeah. We did.
You
It was
did?
the yo-yo
You did
test.
one?
It was the yo-yo.
Yo-yo test. Yeah,
It
yo-yo
was the
test.
yo-yo back then. But we didn't. That wasn't the reason. So I
Yep.
actually did it with Kenya as well. Because
Yes.
what I wanted to do was to show them they didn't think that they didn't know how far they could push themselves. So what happened was that they did the yo-yo, and I said, right, we're going to do the yo-yo, but once you're out for the yo-yo, we're doing active recovery until the last person finishes, so I just want you to do some passing up and down the pitch. So they did it. The last man went, and then I said 3 minutes later, I said, right, we're back on the line. And because I wanted to see their mental reaction.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to see how they would react. And they were like, what? No. and it was like, yeah, no, we're going again now, lads. So I said, you can either whinge or you moan, or you can just dig in and see where you get to. And it's that thing in that mind is they all went, and then they went into fight or flight, which was right. It's us against you again, which I kind of wanted a little bit as well, because I wanted to see what their fight was and would they come together. And they went, and to be fair, most of them were within one level of what they did the first time.
Is that
which
right?
again showed me the where they were at, and that we did do that, and I only did that once to them, and I did it once to the Kenyan boys, what it did is it gave them a bit of an inner confidence as well. Is look, this is how hard you can push it, and you haven't been pushing yourself, which is means what we are going to be is we're going to be physically one of the fittest teams on the circuit. And when we did with USA again with the different cultural pieces, it was important, and with the Kenyans it was ridiculous because they all would never, they had a lot of self-doubt, the Kenyans, because it's just culturally about how they're brought through.
Yeah.
And they always felt like second-class citizens on the World Series. So that pre-season we did with them, by the end of it, because we gave them supplementation as well, they looked like chiseled warriors.
They did.
So
I remember that.
The first warm-up.
I always remember what they looked like, Mike. Gee,
Yeah.
they were great.
The first warm-up we went out in, it was in the Gold Coast back then. I made them go out in their vests, and they looked like proper thoroughbreds, all of them, and it was glistening as well in the sunlight, and the Kiwis looked like that. They just went, where are these boys? And they did. They looked great. I mean, we still had a lot to improve on our rugby, but physically, and they've lived that mantra ever since. It's like when you run into a Kenyan that's conditioned, it's like running into a brick wall. It's brutal, and they manhandle you.
Yeah. And so you actually said, right, everyone's wearing their vests, their singlets.
Yeah, singlets out, boom, go. Yeah, and they jogged to the warm up, and they felt, it's like with a man, if they feel confident, young men feel confident, then all of a sudden they lift their shoulders, and they knew that they were able to live physically with anybody. And that was the same where we got to with the USA boys very quickly, is that if you can live with anybody physically, now we've taken that out of the equation, because that requires zero talent, because you're all athletically gifted. So otherwise you wouldn't be here. So, but it takes zero talent to apply yourself and empty and get where you need to get to. And that was the start point of what we try to do. Yeah. So, wow. I mean, there's a great video of Carlin collapsing after the second one, but that's because of typical Carlin. He gave everything, but the video is comedy.
That's great. Did you do it you did it quite early when you relatively one of the first ones you got there? Was that a bit of a set your stall out for you as a? Yeah. Well, no,
when it talks about that coaching continuum, right? So when I first arrived with them, because they were in disarray and disorganized, it was very directive, kind of, this is what we're going to do.
Yes.
I was that end of the spectrum, right? And then, so again, it was, I wanted to set out, this is what you're capable of. You don't know it at the moment, but this is what you're capable of. So this was my introduction physically of, you don't know what you're capable of. We do, but we've got to show you. But in order to show you, you've got to suffer. Thereafter that, they started to realize, they still hated it, because like anything, right? Young men hate being pushed to the max the whole time, and we did push them hard. Yep. But that was where we played on them against us. But we're not doing that. We're doing that intentionally, not to piss them off. It was intentional, and then like anything, then the reward comes is the acknowledgement. Because that's all the young players and young athletes want. They want recognition and acknowledgement that they're doing a good job and they've done well. Mm-hmm. And you've got to make sure you give that reinforcement, and it's not empty, that there's real meaning behind it.
I love that, mate, because I think that intention in behind those hard actions, it's not just being a dick or being a taskmaster. Yeah. There's actually there's real intention behind it, and then you reinforce when they did a good job. You actually back it up right there. And then that's just layering levels of trust in you, really, and putting you in a position where they go, right, yeah, I'm all aboard with this guy. He's pushing me hard, and especially young men, right? You like you said, they love that stuff.
They didn't, but they did.
Yeah,
And that,
afterwards they do.
and that's the point. But that's the point that when you again, as a younger men, he's like you don't know what you don't know. And but young athletic men are very capable. They just need to be pushed. And the reason that they hadn't excelled in other things, because don't forget, a lot of these boys were kind of were from other sports as well, right?
Yes.
They were decent basketball players, or they were decent baseball players, or they were decent. And that was the dream in America, is to be one of those.
Yeah.
But the reality is there's something in their character or their ability that stopped them being able to do that. But they had the ability, and did they have the character to match and the work ethic to get after what this could be? And it was just opening their eyes and their world to that. And if that sometimes, like I said, I wasn't being nice, but I was being kind. But the reality is, we have to go through a period where they might not like me some of the time. And I didn't care whether they liked me or not. If they respected me, that was the most important bit. And they knew that I might the best intentions of them at the heart. And that's kind of, again, your consistency off the pitch as well as on the pitch.
That's great, mate. And one aspect on this, which is a bit of a repeating theme for you too, when you're talking about the Kenyans, were in disarray. The Americans were in disarray too when you took over 10 years ago. Like I heard in 2014 when you took over, Nigel Melville, the USA CEO, said they only had a 10% chance of making the Olympics.
Yeah.
Over, and that was like a bone to a wild dog to you, wasn't it? Like,
That was one for me. I love being the underdog. I mean, that's why I took Kenya. Yeah, Kenya. I mean, I've been sat in the commentary chair, and people were saying, "Oh, you know, what do you know? You sat in the nice commentary chair doing the media stuff," and I was like, "Well," and so I fancied it, and I loved it because, Kenya made me think about coaching in a very purest sense. It took it back to the simplistic, because we had nothing. I literally turned up. I had a bag of balls and cones, and I had 20 Kenyans that were late to training. And it was.
Did you bring your own balls and cones too?
No. Literally, I wish I had. I got to be honest, because when I saw what I got, and I sat there in the long grass, I was like, "What have you done here? Your mouth has shot yourself right in the foot." But it made me think about the game in the simplest of sense. And even when I got involved with England, we were massively underperforming for for the capabilities we had, because we were not organised. And we had no purpose. So, I mean, like USA won 10% when ultimately it was always going to come off to a one-off game against Canada, who were riding high at the time.
Yeah.
They were like third or fourth in the world. But the reality was, it's a one-off game. And I did the matchups, and I looked, and I was like, well, I back us, looking at the talent. If we get alignment, that we should have more than a decent shot in that game. So for 50-50, that was probably the true odds. But when they cited 10%, I was like, I'll take those odds.
Yeah. I can only go one direction here. It's like a dream statement when you're going for a job, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that is right. No, that's great. Isn't it funny how the different places you go to find a different little connection? You talked about England there. They just needed a bit of purpose. They had everything they needed. You go to Kenya, and you're just getting guys on actually doing weights, that kind of thing, aren't you? You're just like taking them to a place where there has weights, it's totally
100%. Well, we had to use things that weren't weights as well. That was part of the thing as well. Some of the stuff they used to lift and do was it was what it was, and they didn't want for anything as long as you gave them love and direction, and you looked after them. Like the Kenyan boys just needed to know, because they're so used to if you're doing something for me, what's in it for you? And the very fact that there was nothing in it for us apart from we're here for you, once they got their head around that, they run through walls for you, literally run through walls for you. And because they come from an upbringing of nobody does anything for anybody unless there's something for them. And that's just the nature of that. So again, unlocking and understanding what their environment is, and then showing that you don't have an agenda apart from them was the key to unlocking their door to them going, well, right, we're in this. They're looking out for us. Now we're in it for you. Yeah, I mean, it was really eye opening working with the Kenyan boys, because obviously the politics in Kenya are interesting, and having to govern that again for me as a younger coach who understood business, but again, at times I was quite too much like that with some of the people in Kenya, which probably didn't always help, and I didn't really, and I would have a battle in an empty room sometimes. Do you know what I mean? I would literally would argue in an empty room, and so realizing and recognizing when the battles needed to be had and when they didn't, for the benefit of the team, and that's that emotion to that emotional control, and that emotional investment is critical, and you only get that with battle wounds and experience. And certainly I had to get it wrong to get it right on a number of occasions.
You keep doing it, and eventually the one will stick.
Well, I think as long as you again, and I got better at. Do you know what? I could have done that differently. I could have done that better, and hopefully, you got that opportunity to do that.
Love it, mate. Love it. And now you've taken that one step further. You were with the inaugural Indian League, where you're with Mumbai, and you're with the Kalinga team.
Yeah.
How was that? Like, culturally, how did you go into that? Did you do the same thing? Have to understand the people and what you're dealing with?
It was quite tough. Yeah, it was quite tough, to be fair. Yeah, quite tough, Ben, because the reality is like you get so limited amount of time. They did the draft system. You don't really understand what quality of local player you were getting either. So the challenge of trying to bring all of these cultures together was important, and what was lots of dynamics at play here, right, is the fact that you've got your marquee players, which are world-class players, which are used to doing, I do my job, you do your job. You have these bridge players who are from developing nations, but without being disrespectful, a lot of the bridge players' experience was closer to the Indian players than the marquee players.
Yes.
And then you had the Indian players, which are the local players. So actually trying to bring them all together to create a team is difficult because of the varying of abilities and the cultural differences. And we didn't really have a lot of time together to break down those barriers. Yes, we did. We had some bridges, like we had Roscoe Speckman, who's very good at bridging all cultures and all nationalities. Just he's very good at it.
Yeah.
He's just you're that natural social person that understands that. But when you came to the games, the actual results and it was a little bit of a toss of a coin, because there were so many variables, both in terms of you couldn't cover every hole. You had 2 weeks of training, and ultimately the reality is you had to focus on trying to make the players better. And the challenge I set to the boys was, the marquee boys, is you've got to coach on this trip. You've got to play, but you've got to realise your bigger purpose is to coach and try and make the Indian boys better. The results will be the results, and if it goes your way, it goes your way. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And it didn't go our way. I think we missed out on that top 4 by a point. But you could go, we could have won that game. We could have won that game. We could have, but there was a number of reasons why we didn't. Some out of control, some that weren't. There was injuries that played a part for everybody, but everybody had to contend with it. But ultimately, did the Indian players get better by the end? Yes, they did. Did you educate them and upskill them to give them the best opportunity to go back to their local clubs to spread the word and move forward? Yes, you did. Does this is a marathon, not a sprint, in terms of the RPO, in terms of what their mission and their mantra is. But did you create an opportunity for a new country and new viewership to dare to dream, to be exposed to see the likes of Perry Baker, the Ostrich, Jordan Conroy, Terry Kennedy, all of these fabulous players, yes. And did it capture the imaginations to maybe inspire what could be an emerging rugby nation on the 7 side? Yes, he did. It's just going to take consistency of a few more years, and the evolution on and off the pitch. But in terms of cultural development, I think a lot of the senior players, the marquee players, would have got a fair bit out of it, because they'll start to see how important communication is when you haven't got like for like, and how you interact to get the best out of them, to make them feel comfortable and confident to try things, or without fear of the harsh word. Because again, the Indian culture is very hierarchical. So, you know, and it's the elders and so forth. So they're very considered in what they actually communicate or don't communicate. So you've got to break that down.
They're very considered.
They are. I mean, even if they massively disagree with an elder, they're not saying a thing. So it's very similar to what I would say, like some of the Islander cultures, where silence is deafening, really. If they're not saying anything, it's either they're not confident or they're not comfortable or they don't agree. Yeah. And trying to break that down with young men as well, right, who come from nothing. So they're thinking, if I do speak up, I'm not going to get fed. It's as basic as that. With some, you know, one of the boys we had was from the tea plantations. The only reason he took up rugby was because he got fed. So if he trained, he got fed. Yeah. And so when you put perspective on that, you're like, you know, you start to realize and understand how big the world is, how small our rugby world is in comparison, even though we call it a global game. And what the potential and the capability is that the game can bring to all, you know, and what does success look like? Again, comes back to, you know, it's not always about winning and losing.
Man, I can only imagine the growth that some of those marquee players would have had walking away from that, and what they left with in terms of a person more than a player would have been phenomenal. Absolutely. Yeah. And probably I
hope so. And they might not realise it yet either. That's the point. Yes. It sometimes it will take some time, and they'll look back and they go, I'm like, gee, it'll give them perspective without them realising it. You know, there's some real lessons, and then there's some reflective lessons that will probably come from that. It was a fabulous month. Really, really was. Different.
I can imagine. Well, it's some of the beauty of the sport. Such a global game with such diversity across it throughout the world. That's a sport like in no other, and you can get such perspective on life. Now, Mike, last question time. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I could keep going on, but the last question I like to ask is just this, mate. And I reckon you'd have something interesting here. What's one belief you hold about rugby or culture that you believe in that you reckon your contemporaries or your peers won't believe in, or they disagree with you on?
Oh man, this is a really tough question.
Which one you have to pick, right? You've got multiple, surely.
Yeah, but I haven't. No, I mean, I'm sitting there going, oh, you know, I think everybody would agree with everything I say.
Well, not if I'm going to those referees meetings before a 7 circuit tournament. I'm sure not everyone would.
Definitely not. No, but that's not with culture. That's got to do with interpretation. I think. Do you know what? And I don't know whether people would disagree with me, but I think the biggest thing for me is that even in a team sport, you have to treat individuals individually. One hat doesn't fit all. Now, what I mean by that is that, like, I am a big believer that if this individual needs it and this individual doesn't, I'm not treating you differently, but you need different things. And I think, like, now, does that cause me potential headaches? Absolutely. But that's for me to solve as a coach. That's, you know, and that's about having the small conversations, and that might mean a lot of small conversations to maintain the fact that I still have consistency of values and alignment and chemistry. But I am a big believer in treating individuals as individuals, and one hat doesn't fit all. And that can get me in trouble at times within the team environment, because you're always going to get that bloke that's so process driven going, well, you let him have that. And it's like, yeah, every situation is different. And I think some coaches would disagree with me, like, no, you have to have uniformity here. And I do want consistency of message and consistency of action, but my consistency of message is you're all individuals. Consistency of actions, I'll treat you like individuals as long as it doesn't compromise the team. And I'll try and educate you to get you to ensure that you put the team first before you bring me these dilemmas. So that's probably, but I'm hoping that all coaches will agree. They're all clicking on the comments. I agree with Mike.
Well, mate, I can tell you my children agree with that one, because when my son or daughter says, "Oh, that's not fair. My brother got that," and I'd say, yeah. "Do you want me to treat you the same as I treat your brother?" Yeah. And they have a think about what time they have to go to bed because they're younger. Oh, right. Yeah, no, that's right. No, you can treat us all different. That's no problem. Mike Friday, what an absolute pleasure to have you on board the Coaching Culture podcast. I would like to just quickly sum up 3 of my most favourite memorable points from this conversation with you. Number 1, you need to be kind, but not always nice. And I love that little phrase. It's a subtle distinction, and you framed it as the delivery being nice is it doesn't always have to be nice, but you always have to have that kindness and intention behind what you're saying. I think that's just a lovely distinction, and because a lot of coaches I know think they can't be seen to be rough or gruff or anything like that, but I love the perspective you put on that. Number 2, mold yourself around the team, not the other way around. And you were really cool in that you talked about your communication style as the thing that needs to change, but you don't necessarily have to. You mold the communication to the individual. What they need, deliver it that way, and mold yourself around what the team needs, not what you as the coach needs. And I think that's a cool thing for everyone to understand. Number 3, I love this, is don't get caught in the rat race. Rugby is what you do, not who you are. And I think your global experiences of perspective, and particularly when you talked about some of that Kenyan and Indian perspective, is just keeping it real and understanding the game is just the game. And there's a bigger piece to this wonderful sport of rugby, and it's a connecting thing, and it can really grow you as a person. So never to get lost in the rat race of it all. Mike Friday, what a pleasure to have you on board the Coaching Culture podcast. It's been wonderful.
Cheers, Ben. Lovely to be on, mate.
Awesome, mate.
Great summary. Might have to paraphrase that.